Sana lay awake for the third night in a row, her eyes tracing the faint shadows of the ceiling fan above her. It was moving lazily, creaking every so often, as if mocking her restlessness. The soft hum of the city outside her window was usually comforting, but tonight it felt intrusive, like it was following her inside her mind. The clock on her bedside table read 2:17 a.m. The harsh red digits cutting through the darkness of the room. She sighed, rolling over to her side, pulling the blanket up tighter around her shoulders. It wasn't the first time she'd battled insomnia, but this stretch was different. This was heavier, thicker, like a fog she couldn't climb out of. It had started months ago when her workload at the office doubled unexpectedly. Then the night classes began. The pressure of having to excel in both weighed on her constantly. By the time she crawled into bed at night, she was already exhausted, but her brain wouldn't stop. Lists of tasks, deadlines, the fear of disappointing someone, they all spun in circles in her head. Like a carousel she couldn't get off. Sana had tried everything she'd heard of. Herbal teas that promised relaxation, magnesium tablets, blackout curtains, even those lavender sprays they sold in sleek bottles at the pharmacy. Some nights she'd do breathing exercises, lying on her back with one hand on her stomach, counting to 4 with each inhale and exhale. It helped a little, but never enough to tip her into actual sleep. She had gotten used to the idea that sleep was now out of her control. That night, her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. She almost ignored it, assuming it was another work email. But curiosity got the better of her. It was a message from her friend, Amna. Someone who knew all about her sleepless nights. Try this. Trust me. There was a link beneath the message. It led to a video titled, "Deep Sleep Music. Fall Asleep in 5 minutes." Sana frowned. It sounded like one of those exaggerated claims that preyed on desperate people. She was tired, drained, and not in the mood for gimmicks. But she was also at the edge of her sanity. If there was even a small chance it might help. She pressed play. At first, there was only a low hum, soft and resonant, like distant ocean waves rolling onto a beach. Then the music began, slow, drawn-out tones layered over a subtle, heartbeat-like rhythm. Each note seemed to stretch endlessly, fading into the next in a seamless flow. Sana lay back against her pillow, closing her eyes. At first, nothing happened. She shifted under the blanket, trying to let her shoulders relax. But slowly, she noticed something. The tension in her chest began to ease, just a fraction at first. Her breathing, usually shallow when she was anxious, started to deepen without her forcing it. She became aware of the rhythm of the music and tried to match it. Inhale, pause, exhale. The pace was slower than she was used to. But after a few minutes, it didn't feel forced anymore. Her thoughts, usually darting from one anxious memory to another, began to quiet. The music was soft, but it filled the entire room like a warm blanket. Sana's mind wandered back to a trip she'd taken as a child. To the coast with her parents. She remembered the smell of salt water and how the waves had crashed rhythmically on the rocks. The music carried her back there, as if she could feel the spray on her face again. Minutes passed. But Sana didn't notice the time. She was floating somewhere between wakefulness and sleep. Her body growing heavier with each note, her muscles loosened, her hands unclenched from the sheets. The next thing she knew, sunlight was streaming through the curtains. She blinked at the clock in disbelief. 8:32 a.m. She'd fallen asleep, and, for the first time in weeks, she'd stayed asleep. The next night, Sana played the same music. It worked again. She fell asleep even faster this time, drifting off before the 10-minute mark. Within a week, her nights were completely transformed. It was as if her body had relearned the rhythm of rest, the simple act of letting go. She no longer dreaded bedtime. She no longer stared at the ceiling, waiting for exhaustion to win the fight. And her days began to change, too. She woke up earlier, refreshed enough to make coffee and enjoy it instead of rushing out the door. She smiled at her coworkers instead of snapping at them. Even her posture felt different. Her shoulders weren't weighed down by constant tension. The music became her ritual. Each night, she'd dim the light, put her phone on airplane mode, and let the soft tones of the sleep track wash over her room. The moments just before sleep, when her mind would usually be crowded with worries, became a sanctuary instead. It wasn't just about sleep anymore. It was about the reminder that she could still feel safe, still feel calm, even when life outside was chaotic. It was about trust, trusting her body, trusting the process, and trusting that rest was something she still deserved. One night, as she queued up the music again, she sent Amna a message of her own. Thank you. You saved me. Sana's story wasn't unique. The same music had reached countless others, students, new parents, overworked professionals, all searching for an escape from the grip of insomnia. But for her, it was deeply personal because, for the first time in years, she wasn't just falling asleep. She was dreaming again. And in those dreams, she could finally breathe. For Daniel, night felt like stepping onto a runaway train. He couldn't stop. As soon as his head hit the pillow, his thoughts accelerated. Worry, regret, unfinished conversations, tomorrow's to-do list. Every noise in the apartment made him twitch. The distant hum of traffic, the neighbor's television, even the refrigerator's soft click when it cycled off. It had been 3 months since his divorce. The apartment still felt like it belonged to someone else, with boxes half unpacked and blank walls staring back at him. He told his friends he was fine, that he was using the time to find himself. But deep down, he was exhausted, not just from the heartbreak, from not sleeping. Daniel tried reading before bed, but the pages blurred into one another. He tried warm showers, herbal teas, even jogging late at night to burn through his restlessness. But nothing worked. He would stare at the ceiling until 4 a.m., his heart heavy and his mind spinning. He knew lack of sleep was making everything worse. It frayed his nerves. It made his thoughts darker. But the harder he tried to force himself to sleep, the less it came. One night, desperate, he opened his laptop and searched, "How to sleep when your mind won't stop racing." Thousands of results popped up. Articles, blogs, YouTube videos. He clicked on one almost randomly. Fall asleep in 5 minutes, deep sleep music. The title made him skeptical. He'd never fallen asleep quickly in his life. But something about the thumbnail, a soft image of moonlight spilling through trees, made him press play. At first, there was only a faint hum, so quiet he almost wondered if the speakers were broken. Then the sound swelled, long, resonant, tones layered over soft waves, like a heartbeat echoing through water. Daniel lay back and closed his eyes. He tried not to expect anything, but slowly, something shifted. The music didn't demand his attention the way normal songs did. It was gentle, repetitive, almost hypnotic. His breathing slowed without him thinking about it. He felt his muscles unclench. His shoulders softened into the mattress. He hadn't realized how tense he'd been until that moment. The music seemed to carry him somewhere else. He imagined himself sitting on an empty train, gliding silently through the night. Outside the window, moonlight reflected off endless fields. The rhythmic tones of the track matched the music in his ears. For once, his thoughts weren't darting in every direction. They followed the rhythm. He could feel the weight of his worries settling into the background, softer, like luggage stowed overhead. He didn't need to sort through them right now. He could just ride. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Daniel felt his body grow heavy, like gravity was pulling him deeper into the mattress. He noticed small details he'd been too anxious to see before: how warm the sheets felt against his skin, how the pillow supported his neck just right. His heartbeat slowed to match the music. And then sleep. When Daniel woke up, Sunlight was streaming through the blinds. He blinked at the clock in shock. 9:12 a.m. He'd slept through the night. For the first time in months. The next evening, he tried it again. Same music, same quiet breathing, and again, he fell asleep faster than he'd thought possible. Night after night, the pattern continued. He didn't toss and turn anymore. He didn't pace the apartment at 3 a.m., scrolling through his phone. Instead, he started to look forward to bedtime. It became a ritual. Dim the lights, shut off his devices. Let the deep sleep music fill the apartment like a soft blanket. He still had difficult days. The divorce was still painful. But the nights no longer felt like an enemy. And little by little, Daniel noticed a shift. He was more patient at work. He laughed more easily. He didn't feel so brittle, like the smallest stress might break him. The music hadn't fixed his life, but it had given him the one thing he needed most: rest. One night. Weeks later, Daniel lay in bed with the music playing softly. He thought about how far he'd come since those first sleepless nights, how broken he'd felt, and how even something as simple as sound could help mend him. He whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular, as the music lulled him deeper outside. The world was still buzzing. Cars, sirens, distant conversations. But inside his apartment, Daniel felt safe, and he drifted off before the track even reached its halfway point. Daniel's story reminds us of something we often forget. Our minds aren't meant to run endlessly. Sometimes, all it takes is a gentle reminder, a sound, a rhythm to guide us back to stillness. That's what deep sleep music can do. It isn't magic, but it can feel that way when you wake up and realize you've slept through the night, and your thoughts are no longer running the show. The house was quiet. To quiet. Emma sat on the edge of the bed with her newborn daughter curled against her chest, her tiny breaths warm and soft. The clock on the wall read 3:42 a.m. Another sleepless night. She should have been tired enough to collapse. But her body didn't remember how to relax anymore. The moment her baby stirred, Emma's heart jolted like an alarm bell. Even when her daughter slept soundly, her mind stayed alert, waiting for the next cry. Motherhood was supposed to be beautiful, and it was. But it was also exhausting in ways no one had warned her about. Emma hadn't slept more than 2 hours straight in weeks. Her husband, Daniel, tried to help where he could, but his job required him to leave early and return late. Friends and family stopped by during the day with casseroles and advice. But at night, the house was just her and the baby. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror had become unrecognizable. Pale skin, hollow eyes, lips cracked from dehydration. She kept telling herself she'd adjust, that eventually the baby would sleep through the night. But right now, Emma felt like she was unraveling. One night, as she rocked her daughter in the dark, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from her sister. "Try this. It saved me when I couldn't sleep after Noah was born." There was a link beneath it, a YouTube video. "Fall asleep in 5 minutes. Deep sleep music." Emma almost laughed. She didn't need music. She needed her baby to sleep. And she needed her brain to shut off for even an hour. But she was too tired to argue with herself. She pressed play. At first, she barely noticed the sound. It was soft, like wind moving through trees. Then layers of slow, calming tones began to hum through the room. Filling the silence, Amma adjusted the baby in her arms and let the music play. Something shifted. The air in the room felt warmer, thicker. The steady rhythm of the music reminded her of breathing, slow, deliberate, steady. She matched it, inhaling through her nose and exhaling slowly through her mouth. Her shoulders dropped. She hadn't realized how high they'd been hunched until that moment. The baby stirred softly but didn't wake. The music was gentle enough that it didn't startle her. Emma felt a small spark of hope. She rocked back and forth, letting the notes wash over her. Each sound seemed to blur the edges of her racing thoughts. The baby's tiny hand twitched against her chest. Minutes passed. Emma lay, her daughter down in the bassinet, and held her breath. The baby stayed asleep. Emma climbed into bed, headphones still in, and let the music guide her. She fell asleep before she could even wonder if it would work. The next morning, Emma woke up with sunlight filtering through the blinds. She blinked at the clock. 8:14 a.m. Her daughter was still asleep. Emma sat up slowly, almost afraid to move too fast and break the spell. She felt different, clearer. The music had been the only thing she'd done differently. She played it again the next night, and the next. Each time she fell asleep faster, her body learning to trust the rhythm. The music became a signal to her brain. It was safe to rest now. It didn't just help her. Her baby seemed calmer, too. The music's soft tones lulled the entire room into a slower pace. Emma would play it while nursing, while folding laundry, while watching the sun set through the nursery window. It became their shared ritual, a little island of peace in the chaos of new parenthood. Weeks passed, and Emma started to feel like herself again. She laughed more. She smiled at her reflection in the mirror. The dark circles under her eyes lightened, but the biggest change wasn't visible. It was the way her chest no longer felt like a clenched fist all the time. She had learned how to rest again. One night, as she put her daughter to bed, Emma whispered, "Thank you to the baby, to the music, to the moment itself." Because she knew now that rest wasn't a luxury. It was survival. Emma's story is one many new parents will understand. The sleepless nights, the weight of responsibility, the constant fear of doing something wrong. But she learned that rest isn't about perfection. It's about giving yourself permission to stop fighting. Sometimes, all it takes is the right sound, a soft melody, a steady rhythm to remind your body it can let go. Now, every night, Emma plays the same music. She no longer needs the headphones. The sound fills the entire house, calming the baby and soothing her own mind. And for the first time since becoming a mother, she knows she can sleep. She can dream again. Ethan had been home for 6 months, but his body still felt like it was on the battlefield. Every night, the memories returned, the blinding noise, the smell of dust and sweat, the constant hum of danger. Even in the safety of his small apartment, Ethan's body stayed alert, his shoulders tight, his hands unconsciously clenched into fists. The doctors called it hypervilance. To Ethan, it felt like a curse. He would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing phantom noises that weren't there. When sleep did come, it came in short, restless bursts, always interrupted by nightmares. He'd wake up, gasping, the sheets tangled around his legs like restraints. He tried everything the therapists recommended: journaling, meditation, even prescription medication. But nothing stopped the flashbacks. Nothing convinced his nervous system that he was finally home. Night after night, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, too afraid to close his eyes. One evening, after a particularly bad day, he picked up his phone and texted his old friend Marcus, who had served with him overseas. "How do you sleep?" Marcus replied instantly, "I didn't for a long time." But this helped. He sent Ethan a link to a video. "Fall asleep in 5 minutes. Deep sleep music." Ethan frowned. Music. He'd tried white noise machines, nature sounds, even guided meditations, but none of them worked. Still, he clicked the link. The first note was so soft, Ethan almost didn't hear it. It wasn't like the usual sleep sounds. There was no abrupt beginning, no melody that demanded attention. Just a gentle hum, low and steady, like the distant resonance of a drum. Then another tone joined it, rising and falling in slow waves. Ethan lay back and closed his eyes, unsure of what he was expecting. At first, nothing happened. He still felt tense. He still noticed the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the occasional car passing outside. But after a few minutes, something shifted. The music was repetitive in a way that felt safe, predictable. The tones blended together like a slow tide washing over his thoughts. His breathing, which had been shallow and quick, began to deepen without him thinking about it. He unclenched his hands. The memories didn't disappear, but they felt more distant, like someone had turned the volume down on them. Ethan wasn't used to that. He didn't fall asleep immediately, but he came closer than he had in months. The next night, he tried again. This time, he lay on his back with his hands resting on his stomach, letting the music guide his breathing. Inhale, pause, exhale, His mind wandered. Lest he fell asleep before the track finished, Ethan made it a nightly ritual. He dimmed the lights, turned off his phone notifications, and let the music play softly through his headphones. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight, but they became less frequent. When he woke up in the middle of the night, the music was still there, steady and calming. It was like having a lifeline to pull him back from the edge. And for the first time in a long time, he started to believe that rest was possible. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan began to notice changes. His mornings felt less like battles. He could drink his coffee slowly instead of gulping it down like a soldier on the run. He felt more patient when talking to his family. He laughed with Marcus during their weekly calls. He wasn't healed. Not completely, but he was healing. And the music had been the first step. One night, Ethan lay in bed with the music playing softly. He thought about the friends he'd lost, the weight he still carried, and then he thought about the small victories, how he'd managed to sleep 6 hours straight, how he could finally walk past a fireworks stand without flinching, how the music reminded him every night that he was safe now. He whispered, "Thank you," to the darkness as the tones lulled him deeper, because he knew that the hardest part wasn't falling asleep. It was learning to trust that he could. Ethan's story is one of quiet resilience. For those living with trauma, rest can feel like a luxury, but sleep isn't just a comfort. It's a lifeline, and sometimes all it takes is the right sound to remind your body that it's finally safe to let go now. Every night, Ethan plays the same deep sleep music. He no longer needs the headphones. The sound fills the entire apartment, soft and steady, a reminder that he's home, that the war is behind him, and that sleep is his again. Maya had always been good at compartmentalizing. At least, that's what she told herself in her 12 years as a night shift nurse in the ICU. She'd learned how to lock away the stress, the grief, the images she couldn't unsee. She'd walk into the hospital at 7 p.m. sharp, work 12 brutal hours on her feet, then clock out as if none of it had touched her. But lately, the walls she'd built inside her mind were starting to crack. She would drive home in the pale light of morning, too wired to notice the sunrise. Her heart still raced with the rhythm of alarms and code blues. She could almost hear the beeping monitors in the back of her head, and when she finally climbed into bed, her body refused to rest. Maya tossed and turned for hours, replaying everything. From her shift, the patients she couldn't save, the ones who'd cried out in pain, the families she'd had to comfort. She stared at the ceiling, waiting for her heart to slow, but it never did. She tried sleeping pills, but they left her groggy and heavy-headed. She tried blackout curtains, meditation apps, even leaving the TV on for background noise. Nothing worked. Sleep became something she dreaded because she knew she wouldn't find it. One morning, after another sleepless night, Maya sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She felt like a ghost. That's when she saw a message from another nurse she knew. "This saved me. Try it." It was a link to a video. Fall asleep in 5 minutes. Deep sleep music. Maya almost laughed. Music. She'd tried white noise and guided meditations before, but she was desperate. She plugged in her headphones, crawled into bed, and pressed play. The first sounds were so soft they barely registered. A low, resonant hum, followed by a slow rhythm, like the distant pulse of the ocean. The tones overlapped each other, deep and steady, like breathing. Maya lay on her back, hands resting on her stomach, and listened. Her thoughts still buzzed, the shift she'd just finished, the patients who might not make it through the night, but slowly. The music seemed to push those thoughts further away. She became aware of her body, how tense her shoulders were, how her jaw was clenched. She let the music guide her breathing. Inhale, pause, exhale. The rhythm felt slow at first, but soon her breath matched it without effort. Her body began to soften into the mattress, and for the first time in weeks, Maya drifted into sleep. When she woke, sunlight was spilling through the blinds. She blinked at the clock in disbelief. 3:15 p.m. She'd slept for nearly 8 hours. She couldn't remember the last time that it happened, that night. After another long shift, Maya played the music again. She fell asleep even faster, night after night. She made it part of her routine. She would come home, change out of her scrubs, dim the lights, and let the deep sleep music fill her apartment. The tones became a signal to her body. The shift was over. It was safe to rest. Within weeks, Maya felt a change. She didn't wake up with a pounding heart. Anymore, she didn't replay her shifts over and over like a broken record. She laughed more easily with her coworkers. She had more energy for her patients, and she stopped dreading bedtime because she knew that as soon as the music started, her body would follow. Maya still had hard days, nights when the ICU felt overwhelming, when the losses weighed heavy. But now she had something to help her release it all. When she got home, the music wasn't magic, but it was powerful. It reminded her that she didn't have to carry everything with her, that she could lay it down, at least for the night. One morning, after another deep and dreamless sleep, Maya sat at her kitchen table and sent a message to another nurse who was struggling. "Try this. It saved me." And she sent the same link. Because sometimes what we need most isn't advice or explanation. Sometimes we just need something to help us breathe again. Now, every morning after her shift, Maya plays the same music as she curls up in bed. She no longer lies awake, counting the hours until she has to return to work. Instead, she closes her eyes and lets the sound guide her to the one thing she'd almost forgotten how to find: rest. The library closed at midnight. But Ava's mind didn't. She'd been hunched over textbooks for hours, her highlighters scattered across the table like confetti. Her final exams were less than a week away, and the pressure was crushing. Every time she looked at her calendar, it felt like the days were collapsing inward, time shrinking faster than she could keep up. Ava was a perfectionist, and it showed. Her notes were color-coded, her flashcards stacked in neat piles. But no amount of organization could fix the problem. Her brain wouldn't stop, even after leaving the library. Even after trudging back to her tiny apartment and crawling into bed, Ava's thoughts kept spinning. What if I fail? What if I can't graduate on time? What if all of this is for nothing? Her body was exhausted, but her mind refused to rest. She stared at the ceiling until 3 a.m., then checked her phone, horrified by how little time she had left to sleep. And the cycle repeated, night after night. By the fourth day, Ava was running on fumes. She showed up to class with dark circles under her eyes and a thermos of coffee she barely tasted. Her friends noticed the change. She was more irritable, less focused, snapping at people for no reason. That afternoon, she met up with her friend Claire to study. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," Claire said gently. "I haven't," Ava admitted. Voice cracking, Claire reached into her bag and handed her a slip of paper. "Listen to this tonight," she said. "It's called Deep Sleep Music. Saved me during finals last year. Ava glanced at the note. A video link. Fall asleep in 5 minutes. Deep sleep music. She almost rolled her eyes. She'd tried white noise apps and meditation tracks before. She tucked the paper into her pocket because she was desperate. That night, Ava lay in bed and put on her headphones. At first, she felt ridiculous. Then, the music began. A low, resonant hum filled her ears, deep and steady, like the ocean's heartbeat. Layers of soft tones floated on top, rising and falling slowly. Ava closed her eyes. She tried to focus on the music instead of her thoughts. Inhale, exhale, the notes blurred together, seamless and repetitive. For the first time in days, her shoulders began to loosen. The knots in her stomach began to soften. Her breathing slowed. She didn't fall asleep right away, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness, and it was enough. Within minutes, she was drifting. The next thing she knew, sunlight was streaming through the blinds. She blinked at the clock in shock. 9:02 a.m. She'd slept through the entire night. The following evening, Ava played the music again. This time, she fell asleep even faster. Night after night, the pattern continued. The music became her anchor, something to pull her away from the storm of her thoughts. It wasn't magic, but it reminded her body how to rest. With sleep came clarity. Ava's studying became more focused. She remembered more of what she read. Her irritability faded, and she found herself laughing again with friends. She realized that the mornighters and endless cups of coffee weren't what made her successful. It was balance, and the music had given her. That finals week arrived, but Ava didn't feel the same sense of dread. She studied hard, yes, but when it was time for bed, she let the music guide her into rest. On the morning of her last exam, she woke up refreshed and calm. She finished the test with time to spare, and when she saw her grades a week later, she cried with relief. She had passed every class, now every night. Ava still plays the same music, not because she's worried about exams, but because it reminds her of something important, that sleep isn't a luxury. It's the foundation for everything else. And no matter how busy life gets, she deserves to rest. One night, Ava sent Claire a message. "Thank you. You saved me." And she shared the same link with another classmate who was struggling, because she knew what it was like to feel like you'd never sleep again, and she knew how life-changing it was to find a way back. Ava's story is proof that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful. A soft sound, a steady rhythm, a reminder that your body knows how to heal. If you just give it the chance. For Lena, the nights were the hardest during the day. She could keep herself busy, answer emails, clean the house, distract herself with television shows she barely remembered. But as soon as the sun went down and the world quieted, the grief crept in. It had been 3 months since her father died, and she still couldn't accept it. She would lie in bed, clutching the old cardigan he'd left behind, and replay their last conversation over and over. If only I'd called sooner. If only I'd noticed he was sick. If only I could hear his voice one more time. Sleep never came, and when it did, it came in short, jarring bursts, always followed by dreams where he was alive again. She'd wake up, gasping, heart racing, the cardigan damp with tears. She began to dread bedtime, because night meant silence, and silence meant memories. One evening, Lena's sister dropped by with a small basket of groceries and a hug that lingered. "Too long. You need to sleep," her sister whispered. "I can't," Lena admitted, voice breaking. Her sister reached into her purse and handed her a folded piece of paper. "Try this," she said softly. "It helped me after Mom died." It was a link to a video. "Fall asleep in 5 minutes. Deep sleep music." Lena nodded, though she didn't believe it would help. Nothing had helped, but that night, with her heart heavy and her eyes burning from exhaustion, she pressed play. The music was soft, not like a song, not like anything she could hum along to, just a low, steady hum that seemed to fill the room, layered with tones that rose and fell like a slow, calming breath. Lena lay on her side and closed her eyes at first. The memories came rushing back, as they always did. But the music was different. It didn't drown out her thoughts. It guided them. The tones blurred the sharp edges of her pain, softening the ache just enough for her to breathe. She matched her breath to the rhythm. Inhale, exhale. She felt her muscles loosen, her jaw unclenched, and, for the first time in months, she let go of the cardigan in her hands. She didn't fall asleep right away, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Minutes passed. The music carried her somewhere quieter, somewhere softer, and then she drifted. Lena woke up with sunlight streaming through the curtains. She blinked at the clock. 8:47 a.m. She'd slept through the entire night. She sat up slowly, feeling the weight of her body sink into the mattress. And for the first time since losing her father, she didn't cry the moment she opened her eyes. The next night, Lena played the music again, and again it worked. Night after night. The pattern continued. Her grief didn't disappear. She didn't expect it to, but the music gave her permission to rest. It reminded her that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant allowing herself the space to breathe, even when her heart still ached. Weeks passed. The dark circles under Lena's eyes began to fade. She had more energy for her family, for her friends, for herself. She found herself smiling at small things again. The way the sunlight hit her kitchen counter, the smell of coffee brewing in the morning. She still missed her father, but she no longer felt like the grief was consuming her, and it all started with the music. One night, Lena sat in bed with the music playing softly. She closed her eyes and thought of her father, not with guilt, but with love. She whispered, "Thank you" to him, to the music, to the moment itself, because she knew now that rest wasn't just about sleep. It was about finding the strength to keep going, and the music had given her that. Lena's story is a reminder of something we all forget. Sleep is not just a physical need, it's an emotional one. And sometimes, when life feels unbearable, the simple act of rest can be the first step back to hope. Now, every night, Lena plays the same deep sleep music. She no longer clutches the cardigan in fear of forgetting. She keeps it folded at the end of her bed, a quiet reminder of the man who raised her. And she knows that when she closes her eyes, the music will carry her gently into a place where she can dream again, because sleep isn't the end of grief, but it is the beginning of healing. All 7 stories show one truth. No matter who you are or what you're going through, stress, trauma, heartbreak, fear, your body knows how to rest. Sometimes it just needs a gentle reminder, a soft sound, a steady rhythm, a voice that whispers, "You're safe now. You can sleep."